the LaxFactor podcast.
What is up, college lacrosse fans? We have another episode of the LaxFactor Lacrosse podcast. I think this is number 148, and today, three things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the Duke-UNC matchup that takes place tomorrow, pitting number one against number two. Number one, Duke against number two, North Carolina. And then I want to talk about Big Ten action. There was Big Ten action on Sunday that I didn't get to talk about in Sunday's episode. Maryland and Rutgers played again, and then Hopkins and Penn State did battle again. So I want to kind of recap both of those games. I have a big write-up done up for the Maryland and the Rutgers game. Before I get into it, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you can go to LaxFactor.com to get swag and things like that. Also, if you do not already listen to audio, if you're not already subscribed to our feed for the audio version of the podcast, we're about to start putting out audio-only shows during the week specific to conferences. So we'll start going through, covering a couple of conferences each week, staggering. Always we'll do the ACC and the Big Ten, and then we'll do a bunch of other conferences as well. So on the off days, on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, we'll start putting out exclusive content to audio only. So be sure to go to anchor.fm/LaxFactor, and then, or anywhere where you can get podcasts, period. Look us up there. We're everywhere where you can find podcasts. So now let's get into this. Duke and UNC, battle of the number one and number two teams, goes down Thursday night in Durham. Duke gets to play this game at home. Both teams' second ACC contest, if I'm correct. I don't even know if I'm correct, but Duke holds a 1-goal win over number 4 Syracuse, and UNC has a 3-goal win over now number 5 Virginia, depending on the polls. I think Virginia is number 5 in one of the polls. I think it was the coaches poll. And if that's the case, that's crazy, because you have Duke, UNC, Syracuse, and Virginia all in the top 5 on the coaches poll, if that is how I read it. And I'll check a little bit later here. So anyway, this game, it pits the number 1 most efficient offense in the nation, North Carolina's, against one of the top 15 most efficient defensive teams in the country, Duke. So as we're sitting here kind of looking at keys for Duke in this game, I've been saying that you have to press UNC all over the field. I believe it was Richmond kind of gave us the formula for holding UNC's offense, disrupting UNC's offense, preventing those step-down shooters from absolutely massacring you. And they kind of played UNC pretty reasonably in their loss. Duke did that to Syracuse. Duke came out and pressed Syracuse all over the field. And in the first half, that worked incredibly well. I felt like what Duke didn't do was in the second half, they didn't adjust. In the first half, it took Syracuse out of their flow. What happens when you press teams on the outside? And Duke was shutting off adjacent players, even sticking whoever happened to be the ball carrier. The ball carrier got stuck with the ball and no one else could get the ball. That worked well, disrupted Cuse. They had hard times finishing early on because you end up kind of playing a frantic style of offense when you can't get rid of the ball and it's like, oh, crap, I've got the ball. I've got to go to the rack. Nobody else is open. They kind of put guys on the island a little bit, although they were helping, just kind of helping weirdly and late. It worked. In the second half, however, they kept that same aggressiveness up out on the edges, and you saw Syracuse start to succeed a lot more in cutting off-ball cuts, backdooring their guys. We saw Rafis at one point, or no, it was Seabold at one point backdoored his guy, and Scanlon hit him on the crease. I think that's how it went down. But anyway, the idea being Duke probably should have adjusted that a little bit. They probably should have opened up the adjacents a little bit and only pressed the ball carrier to prevent dodges. I didn't like what Duke did in the second half, not adjusting, and they continued to just press, and they continued to just get eaten alive off ball over and over. So I think that's one thing that Duke has to watch. UNC, it's going to work. You press, you're gonna stop their step down shooters, but like Syracuse, who actually enjoys quite a bit of step down shooting from their midfield units. You want to just make sure that you don't turn UNC's step-down shooters into very effective cutters, which could happen. So they just kind of have to find that happy medium and play a little bit better on those edges and watch those backdoor cuts. UNC offensively against UNC, Duke just needs to make sure that they're keeping their mids active and dodging. I felt like in the first half against Syracuse, Duke's midfielders were dodging. Even if they weren't really making a lot happen with those dodges, they were dodging and sharing the ball, dodging, moving the ball to X. And what happens is you get in a flow, everyone gets touches, and it makes everybody more effective. More importantly, if you're dodging as a midfielder, it opens things up a little bit for the attack because you keep your midfield units and the defense that they're playing a little bit more honest. If they have to account for you as a dodger, then they're going to worry about that. And now that opens you up to maybe being a cutter as well. All sorts of things. It's just having good offensive flow is important. In the second half against Syracuse, Duke went away a little bit from the dodging and sharing and went a little bit more, I felt like, into dodging and shooting. And they were getting shots off those first dodges. It was allowing Porter to see the ball a little better. So I think Duke needs to keep the ball moving. Make sure that you're dodging, bumping, as opposed to dodging and getting shots off. Now, Porter, he came up huge in that second half as well, and that kind of disrupted Duke's flow. So can Krieg and Cage do that for UNC or do that against Duke? We'll see. Overall, though, Duke's got the fourth ranked most efficient offense in the country, not far behind UNC, who's number 1. So in terms of offensive juggernauts, both of these teams right at the top per lacrossereference.com. They actually have a pro subscription as well that you can go to, pro.lacrossereference.com. I am a member of that, and I think they just moved into a monthly. You can actually get it monthly now. So if you kind of want to just see what that pro.lacrossereference.com membership looks like, I think you can pay, it's like $10 for a month or something like that. Boom, you got it for a month through the end of the season maybe, and then you're done. I got a whole year for myself. Anyway, Duke, 4th ranked offense in the country. UNC's number 1. Problem for North Carolina is per lacrossereference.com, 42nd ranked defense, and Duke's is 13th. So Duke, in terms of just offense and defensive firepower, they are definitely a little bit ahead of North Carolina, but make no mistake, North Carolina absolutely could win a shootout. But I think for Duke, going against that North Carolina defense, they just have to keep attacking, try to win those one-on-one matchups, make sure you're moving and sharing the ball, hitting cutters, hitting backside. Just make sure they continue to play good team offense like they did in the first half of the Syracuse game and then in the final 4 or 5 minutes of the Syracuse game, and Duke should be okay. Now, keys for UNC. They're going to struggle with one-on-one matchups. Syracuse did at times, and I think Syracuse defensively, they're ranked better than UNC is per Lacrosse reference. So you have that, but I think in North Carolina's case, I don't think all over the field they have the defenders that are going to win those one-on-one matchups. So I'm wondering if we may see out of North Carolina a little bit of that super help defense that they played against Denver, where the slides are coming automatically, and then maybe they'll press Duke as well so that the slides have more time to get there. But either way, North Carolina is going to have to play help defense. I don't think they're going to be able to put anyone on an island. Syracuse at times put their defenders on islands against Duke Dodgers, and they held up pretty well. So they would slide late where they had to, but I think that North Carolina is probably going to have to slide early and often. And their young keeper, Krieg, he needs to have a good start. He's been playing really well, above 50%, but he has not faced a team like Syracuse yet. Virginia, they were pretty good, and Krieg was good in that game. He struggled against High Point, but he's been in the 60s in terms of save percentage since that game. So he has to play well as well on top of their defense having to just do everything they can to provide help when defenders get beat by Dodgers. Offensively, UNC is capable of winning a shootout, though. So even if defensively they don't hold up well, if Duke scores 16 goals, can North Carolina score 17 goals against this Duke defense? I think Syracuse put up 14, so I don't see why I think that this is going to be a game 15 and above. I don't think we're going to see a low scoring contest here. So North Carolina, even with defensively where they falter, they have the offensive firepower to win a shootout. Now, one of the things I think they need to do, though, and keys offensively for them is going to be, if Duke does come out and press, they have to win their one-on-one matchups as Dodgers. I think they can do that. I think you put the top 6 offensive players on the field for North Carolina, almost every single one of them is capable of winning a one-on-one matchup. And then on top of it, once you win that one-on-one matchup and you draw a slide from one of the Duke defenders, you start hitting people as cutters, as backdoor cutters, as step-down shooters. So they just have to make sure that they handle that. They need to make sure they handle that pressure well, and where Duke does come out and pressure them, they just have to sting them. One place I would attack, off ball specifically, Carpenter, number 33, long pole for Duke. He has been really good when the ball's on the deck, ground ball machine, plays really well up on the wings. I think he's played a little bit of close D at times, depending on the matchups as well. But again, in the Syracuse game, especially in the second half, he got exposed a little bit off ball. And I think part of it was Syracuse was running him adjacent, And as he's trying to guard one of those, deadly Syracuse midfielders, he's kind of coming out trying to shut them off. And there was numerous times where he got beat to the cage by cutters. I'd say at least 3 times when I was watching the highlights this morning. So if I was North Carolina, I would say, hey, let's really put this guy near where we have ball carriers, see if we can get him to turn his head a little bit too often, send guys backdoor on him. But I'd try to attack Carpenter specifically because Syracuse had a lot of success with midfielders cutting off of him. Face-offs, huge factor in the Cuse win. Naso, he was incredible. Slight edge, I'd say, goes to Duke here, but UNC's top 2 guys, Tucci and the other guy, the other guy was 59% and Tucci's sitting at 64%. Tucci's taken 20 or so less draws than the other guy, but both very capable. So do they match up better with Naso and the Duke wings? I am not sure. But Naso, he's chilling at 67% after the Cuse bloodbath. And so this battle at the faceoff dot's going to be huge. The wing play is going to be huge. So that will be something to watch. And then the other thing is the keepers. Colin Krieg, can he play as well and keep pace with Adler? And I would say that, on a good day, Krieg could be as good as anybody. The kicker here is going to be he's playing Duke on this day. So, I mean, Duke's played a really tough opponent now in Syracuse. North Carolina has played a really tough opponent in Virginia, and Krieg fared well in that game. Adler fared well against Syracuse. So kind of the goalie battle again in a close game. What goalie is going to come up with the big stops? What goalie is going to end up with more saves? Oftentimes that will end up being the goalie that comes up with more saves will end up being the goalie that gets the W in the win. Now, in this game overall, I you know me, I am terrible at predictions, absolutely terrible at predictions, but I do like Duke. On paper, if you go by Lacrosse reference, Duke is a more complete team. They are almost as good as North Carolina offensively, and they are much better than North Carolina defensively. But once again, you got to play the game still, and we're playing this at Duke, but it's only, a 20-minute bus ride from Chapel Hill? I could be wrong on that. For all I know, it could be like 3 or 4 hours, but I do believe they're pretty close. Hence the rivalry. So I like Duke in this, and I like Duke in a shootout, and I like Duke in a very close game. 1-2-goal game maybe. If it ends up being a 2-goal game, I presume there's an empty netter or a late game goal scored because they're pressing and trying to get the ball back or whatnot. I think that the battle of Sowers versus Gray, I feel like in this one, normally you don't necessarily see JT guarding the other team's best player, especially if that other team's best player is a Dodger. Being that Gray does the bulk of his damage off ball, we very well may see a JT Giles Harris versus Chris Gray matchup. So that'll be something to watch. Who guards Gray and how well of a job do they do with him off ball? You could afford to kind of let him beat you on ball, carrying the ball. You really can't afford to let him open up and get the rest of that offense flowing by allowing him to beat you off ball. And then Mike Sowers, I presume you're going to see Bowen guarding Sowers. Advantage Sowers all day. I mean, I don't know if North Carolina has a defender capable. They don't have a defender capable of hanging with Sowers. Even Bowen is just too big. He's big and physical, but he does not have feet that are going to be able to hang with Mike Sowers. So I give the slight edge here in terms of matchups to Sowers simply because Gray is dealing with JT Giles Harris, best defender in the game overall, and JT's strength happens to also be Gray's strength. Off ball, cutting, off ball finishing for Gray, and then in terms of JT, off ball, covering guys off ball was one of his strengths. He got beat early by Cuse on one of the dodges. Hiltz beat him, left-handed quick stick off the crease, and it didn't happen again the rest of that game in terms of JT giving up a goal like that. So I expect that to be a matchup, and I wouldn't be surprised in this case to see JT covering North Carolina's best player. So I give the edge to Duke. I think Duke wins by a goal or two. I think Sowers and Gray are going to end up neck and neck in terms of their points production. But at the end of this day, the team that wins this game, assuming both players put up similar points and have similar quality games, the winner of this game, the edge is now sitting to that person. Like I said a couple weeks ago, I felt like Gray kind of had the edge, and then after this Cuse win, I automatically give Sowers the edge. He scores the game winner. He's big down the stretch, 3-3 against a very capable defense, the number 4 team in the country. So he's got the better win at this point, and that was a big performance for him. So this game right now, the winner of this game at the end of it, assuming both of them play similar games and equally well, it's going to end up winner is now the edge for the Tewaaraton. And then we're speaking about Tewaaraton. Got another Tewaaraton candidate, probably a finalist, playing in the Maryland-Rutgers game. So this game took place Sunday. I had already recorded the podcast and was sitting on the couch watching this as you guys were watching me ramble. Rutgers, they jumped out to a 3-0 lead and then held a 4-2 lead by the end of the first quarter. So it was another really good start for the Scarlet Knights. Freshman Shane Knobloch, he was recently honored as one of IL's top freshmen. He got the scoring popping with a nice goal off a corner to middle dodge at about the 12:07 mark of the first quarter. Ryan Gallagher and Connor Kirst each tallied goals after that. All three of those Rutgers goals were unassisted. Kyle Long scored unassisted for Maryland, and then Knobloch struck again unassisted for Rutgers, and then it's 4-1 Rutgers. Maryland ends up getting a man-up opportunity to end the first, and Anthony DeMeo stuck it with 11 seconds left in the quarter, assisted by Logan Wisnauskas. Now, a big part of the story of that first quarter was face-offs. Rutgers won 5 of 7 draws over the first quarter, and that was something that Maryland would not allow them to do for the rest of the game. Maryland ended up winning the bulk of the face-offs after that. Second quarter, Maryland flips the script on the draws, winning 5 of 8, and they also forced Rutgers into failing on 3 of 4 clears. So you win 5 of 8 faceoffs over the course of the second quarter, and you cause the other team to fail on 3 of 4 clears. That gives you a lot of possessions to play with, and that was pretty much what Maryland needed to control this game again. They end up scoring 6 unanswered goals to start the second quarter, spearheaded by Jared Bernhardt. He scored his first of the game with 10:31 remaining in the second, and then Maltz and Geppert each scored. Bernhardt assisted on Geppert's. And then Bernhardt scored again, 3:29 left in the half, giving Maryland a 7-4 advantage. Maryland wasn't done. He assisted Kyle Long a little bit later. Bernhardt finished the half with 3 goals and 2 assists. All came over that huge run spanning the second quarter. Adam Charlambides, he stuck one for Rutgers at the end of the half, getting Rutgers back within 3, 8-5 Maryland at the half. Now, Rutgers was able to strike first. Oh, my mouth is getting dry. Rutgers was able to strike first in the second half to get within 2 goals, but that's as close as they got the remainder of the day. David Sprock scored Rutgers' 6th goal, and then Logan Wisnauskas scored an unassisted goal for Maryland to extend the lead back to 3, 9-6, and then that would be a developing trend. Rutgers would get things back within 2, Maryland would score again to extend the lead back to 3, and in the end, final score, Maryland 13, Rutgers 9. Now, Maryland's defense played insanely tough. As we're sitting here trying to figure out where does Maryland stand in relation to the ACC teams in terms of offensive quality and output, and then defensive quality, from the outset, even as Rutgers jumped out to a 3-goal lead, you could tell that Maryland's defense came to play as they were kind of forcing Rutgers into long possessions, and then you got the feeling that Rutgers was kind of lucky at times to come away with some of those early goals because Maryland was playing good defense, and it was just Rutgers taking care of the ball through a full possession, often scoring towards the end of the shot clock. And I think lucky's a bad word. I think what it really was, oh shit, Rutgers is up by 3. Like, you're kind of looking at how Maryland's playing defense, but next thing you know, Rutgers is winning by 3. So I think it was partly, in the end, Rutgers won more possessions. Rutgers had the ball nonstop over the course of that first quarter. So despite that really good defense by Maryland, Rutgers was able to score those 3 goals. You know, and what you look at in games like this is that production where it doesn't look right, and the disparity in the score didn't look right considering Maryland wasn't playing terrible defense. That type of play is usually hard to sustain. Rahill, Grill, and Makar all played tough. Makar picked up a GB and had a caused turnover. The others didn't factor as much in the scorebook, but you could see them doing work. Disrupting play, generally just playing really good off-ball defense, on-ball defense, covering Dodgers effectively enough that they didn't have to slide and bring a lot of help, but when they did, the help was there. So, and then I think Pugliese, he got beat early by Knobloch from behind, but then he and the rest of the defenders, after getting beat a couple of times early, they adjusted and then ended up settling in nicely. But credit to Knobloch for beating Roman Pugliese on a dodge from behind and scoring a goal. That kid's a freshman going up against one of the best short stick midfielders to play the game, period, in a long time. So stats off. So hats off to him. Stat lines for Maryland. They won 15 to 25 faceoffs on the day. So despite getting murked in the first quarter, they end up cleaning things up. Justin Shockey took every one of those draws. He adjusted as well as you could. He got 3 first half illegal procedure calls that resulted in a 30-second technical. That undoubtedly hurt him, obviously, but he won out the rest of the day for the most part. Maryland took more shots, 40-34 over Rutgers, and they put more of them on cage, 23-16 over Rutgers. Rutgers had more saves. Kirst had 10. McNaney had 7, but McNaney faced 7 less shots. So that plays. I give the nod here to McNaney for doing just enough to get Maryland to win by a margin nonetheless. But Kirst played okay. Maryland's just deadly on offense. What the hell are you going to do? Maryland, they had 19 turnovers to Rutgers 18, but I still give the advantage to Maryland on that one because in the end, they ended up with more possessions throughout the game, and they were just playing loose and fast. Once they got their offense flowing, if you're scoring goals and you're playing well, you'll take some turnovers here and there. So, I think that even though Maryland had one more turnover than Rutgers, I still give that advantage to Maryland for having more possessions, less turnover to possessions. And then both teams cleared the ball well. The difference was Rutgers failing on that 1 of 4 over the second quarter, or only completing 1 of 4 of those clears over the second quarter. Other than that, both teams were pretty lights out. And then Maryland picked up 31 ground balls to Rutgers 24. Face-off discrepancy. You lose 10 more face-offs than the other team, they're going to pick up some more ground balls than you in the box score. Scoring for Maryland, Bernhardt, 4 goals, 2 assists off 8 shots, only 2 turnovers, but he caused one as well. 6 of 8 shots were on cage. That's a monster game. Tuarton-worthy for sure for Bernhardt. Logan Wisnauskas and Kyle Long were both right behind him. They each had 2 goals and 2 helpers. Long scored his 2 goals off just 3 shots, so kudos to him on that. Wisnauskas also turned the ball over quite a bit, 4 turnovers, which kind of negates at least one of his points, you would say, so he'll have to watch that. Bubba Fairman, he put up 2 goals off 6 shots. Both of the shots that he scored were on, the only 2 shots he scored were on cage. So he puts it on cage, he scores. And then Daniel Maltz, he got blasted. Oh, man. He got blasted by a Bubba Fairman shot at one point, hit right on the spine, right below where the shoulder pads are. So he left the field, and I didn't notice if he came back. I wasn't paying that close attention at that point. It looked like it hurt badly. Poor kid. Scoring for Rutgers, Charlambides, 2 goals, Knobloch, 2 goals, both in the first quarter, and then no one else put up more than a point. Connor Kirst, he was quiet all day, 9 shots, but only 1 goal, so that's not a good game for Kirst. Maryland's defense did a great job preventing quality looks, and they stayed on guys' hands all day long, and generally just didn't get beat all that often. So credit to Maryland's defense for how they covered these Rutgers guys. Goalie battle. Like I said, McNaney, he puts up 7 saves for Maryland versus 9 goals against. Kirst, 10 saves versus 13 goals against. Both played a great game, but I give the advantage to McNaney. Those 7 saves versus 16 shots faced ended up being enough to get the win, and you get the feeling that even if he faced more shots, he was probably going to be up to the task. Next up for each, Maryland faces Penn State at home on 4-3, and Rutgers takes on Ohio State. I expect both of them to pick up wins. Rutgers probably going to continue to beat everybody else in the Big Ten that isn't Maryland, and Maryland's probably going to beat everybody in the Big Ten. Another game, and this one did not go as I expected it to. Johns Hopkins, they lose to Penn State 11-8. Hopkins had a good start as well in this one. They held a 3-2 lead at one point in the first quarter, 4-3 lead to start the second quarter, but the success was short-lived. Once Penn State got the lead, they held on to it for the most part. Hopkins was able to tie things up at 8, scoring the first goal of the fourth quarter, Garrett Degnan unassisted, but that happy time was short-lived as Mac O'Keefe scored a goal at the 9:55 mark of the fourth to give Penn State the lead for good. O'Keefe scored a man-up goal just inside 5 minutes left in the game to extend the lead, and Jack Traynor ended things for real just 30 seconds later, extending the Nittany Lions lead to 11-8, and that's how the game ended. Stat line, I'm happy to report that Kobe Knies, to a degree, he won this game for Penn State. The kid faced 20 shots on cage, only let up 8 of them. That's 15 saves on the day for Knies, and Kierson only put up 9 saves in net for Hopkins. Hopkins put more shots on net than Penn State, but Knies, as a goalie, he played much better, ends up winning the ball game. And I mean, I've been sitting here talking about Kobe Knies for a while. I thought 2 years ago he was going to be the goalie of the year. He had a down year, was not having the best year in 2020 either. He hasn't played incredibly well this year. He's been good. He's been serviceable, but this was a breakout game for him and huge for that Penn State defense. Without him pulling that game off, this is a ball game, and Hopkins very, very, very well, more than likely wins it. It's more complex than that, obviously, though. Penn State, they turned the ball over 6 more times than Hopkins, 22 turnovers for Penn State in this one. That hurt them. Hopkins picked up some more ground balls, but in the end, when your goalie makes 6 more saves than the other guy and it's a close game, boom, you get a win. Another huge factor for Hopkins was that their flow was pretty bad in terms of face-offs. Penn State won 18 to 23. So offensively, Hopkins lacked in possessions. Gerard Arceri won 15 of 19, and then Jake Glatz won 3 of 4. So Penn State dominating the faceoff dot. That factored heavily in this win as well. And then a bright spot for Hopkins was, despite this possession disparity, they hung. They didn't get the ball a whole lot, and at times you felt like, oh, when are they going to get the ball back again? Penn State had a lot of long possessions, and there was a lot of periods where Hopkins just didn't get a good look, and in between letting Penn State get numerous looks. So despite the fact that the faceoff disparity was that bad, that the possession disparity overall was that bad, Hopkins still hung. So if they could take care of some stuff at the faceoff dot, giddy up there in this game as well. Let us check to see what else we have here. As we're sitting here and we're talking about North Carolina and Duke, one thing I didn't do is rip through the stat sheet. Sowers at this point over Duke's 9 games has 50 points, and Chris Gray edging him slightly. He's got 53 points over North Carolina's 8 wins. I still give the edge to Sowers here, though, in terms of actual playing time on the field. Despite Duke getting 1 more game than North Carolina, Sowers hasn't played as many minutes in each game overall as Chris Gray has, and then like we talk about, because Chris Gray does a good chunk of ball carrying and off ball type play, he ends up kind of being a little bit more of a focal point in this offense. So for Sowers to regroup here and put up 50 points over Duke's first 8 games, that's pretty crazy. But watch out for Gray. And then as you're looking at those two at the top of the battle, that second tier of guys, Joe Robertson for Duke, 32 points. Brennan O'Neill for Duke, 30 points. We also have Nicky Solomon at UNC, 27 points. Tanner Cook, 25. So, I mean, the edge goes to Duke's supporting cast overall, I think, especially at the top side of it. I think UNC is going to show a little bit more depth in scoring in terms of their top 6, top 8 offensive guys than Duke's. I think Duke's top 6, though, are better than North Carolina's top 6 overall. But I think North Carolina has a better top 8 than Duke does. So that's going to play a little bit in that as well. And the other games that we have here to look at for this weekend, what do we got going? I've barely looked at this, so I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants on ripping through these. We've got Delaware and Fairfield. I like Delaware there. Let's see here. Boston U against Utah. Utah's heading out here to play them. Big one in the America East. Vermont at UMBC. That's going to be a huge game. Another huge game, conference game. Hobart at Bryant in the NEC. That will be pretty huge. UMass at Drexel is another big one. Providence and Villanova doing battle in the Big East. That'll be huge. But more importantly for me, we've got Notre Dame at Syracuse on Saturday at noon. So that's going to be the big game, most likely, as I'm looking at these on Saturday, is going to be that Notre Dame at Syracuse game. We also have Rutgers, Ohio State, Richmond at Virginia. But nothing beats, even though I'm a Cuse homer, I could still say probably for most people, the big game of the day, Notre Dame at Syracuse. Towson at Hofstra. Towson coming off a big win over Loyola. Colgate and Bucknell, that'll be a good battle. Penn State at Maryland. You're going to give Maryland that one. Georgetown at St. John's. Georgetown probably beats them, but is Caraway back? Is he going to be playing? So that's what we're looking at. I think another one, Patriot League game, Loyola at Navy. Loyola's going to be looking to bounce back for real against Navy here. And that's it, guys. There's not a lot of huge marquee matchups in terms of conference games that we care about. Robert Morris and Jacksonville, crap like that. So I'm going to get out of here. I've yammered enough here. I'm going to end this now. As I said, we are going to have an audio-only podcast that is going to drop on Friday. And then we're going to do our live stream 10 a.m. Saturday morning on YouTube, youtube.com/LaxFactor. But you can check Facebook and Twitter. We'll put links up to it about an hour before we go live. And then, as always, Sunday show. So make sure the audio people, you guys are peeping that. But if you're not someone who traditionally listens to us on an audio platform, if you want to get some extra content Be sure to check Friday because we'll have an audio-only podcast come out then where we're going to talk more in depth about some of these matchups. I want to talk specifically about Hobart-Bryant. I want to talk a little bit about Vermont-UMBC and a couple of the other conference games that I don't always get a chance to talk about because if all I talk about is the lower-level teams and nobody ever listens or watches, and so I have to find a happy medium between incorporating these guys into the mix but talking about the ACC and the Big Ten. So that is it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I am going to get the hell out of here, and I will be back Saturday morning for the live stream, 10 a.m. on YouTube, and then Friday morning audio-only podcast coming out, so go look for that as well. Thank you. Hoost is out.